Hey everyone, welcome to the DarshanTalks podcast. I'm your host, Darshan Kulkarni. It's my mission to help patients trust the products they depend on. As you know by now, I'm an attorney, I'm a pharmacist, I advise companies and people with FDA regulated products. So if you have a think about drugs, a wonder about medical devices, consider cannabis, and obsess over pharmacogenomics, this is the podcast for you. I do these podcasts because they're a lot of fun. I get to learn something new. So if you like learning something new, please leave a comment, please subscribe. It lets me know you're listening and lets people like Jamie, who's here today, know that she wants to actually come here and actually tell us more about what she does. If you want to reach me, you can reach me at DarshanTalks on Twitter or just go to our website at DarshanTalks.com. Today's podcast is going to be really, really exciting because what we're going to end up talking about is something that people have been talking about for a few different years, and it sort of got up and down, and it's been in the news and it's been exciting, and most people are going, I don't even know what this is. So if you're a pharmacist, you're going to have a lot of fun because this opens up a whole new avenue for you. But if you are a drug company wondering, is your drug performing as well as it should? So if you're in the clinical research function, and you've listened to some of the podcasts I've had before with people like Kate Merton, she's talked a little bit about pharmacogenomics as well. But today's discussion is about pharmacogenomics. And our guest today is the guru of gurus, if you will. She teaches the people who are trying to do pharmacogenomics, and trying to understand what this means. Ladies and gentlemen, our guest for today, Dr. Jamie Welke. Hey, Jamie, how are you?
Hi, so good. Thank you for having me on, Darshan. It's a pleasure to talk to you today.
It is so good. And look at you with the whole fancy doctor title. I can't even put my doctor title on. I have a rough time with it. So talk to me a little bit about this journey. What was the path that you took to become the famous Dr. Jamie Welke?
Well, thank you. It's been a very interesting ride, and it's been very exciting too, because as you said, I'm a pharmacist. I practiced in the retail setting for 10 years out of pharmacy school and enjoyed the patient interactions, but felt frustrated that I was so limited in what I could say and how I could help. And I felt like I was mostly just giving people medication, but not helping them. I was just medicating them. And that was really frustrating to me. And the turning point came for me when a close family member of mine, she's a young mom, just like me. She was suffering from depression. And so she went to her doctor to finally get treatment for that. And so the doctor put her on an SSRI, or he put her on sertraline. However, she had a terrible drug reaction to it, and she actually started having suicidal ideation and had to be put into the psych ward at the hospital for 2 weeks. So my poor family member, she has a young family, they all depend on her. Suddenly, her life turned upside down, and she was just in a really bad mental state for a long time. And this happened not once, but twice, because she was given the inappropriate medication. And so to see how much of an emotional toll that had on her family, as well as on her finances, because a month of an inpatient stay is not cheap, made me really think as a pharmacist, surely this could have been prevented. Seeing it in real life, what happens when you have an adverse drug reaction, and then the huge domino effect that has, made me feel like we've got to do more. This is so preventable. Because as she later found out, she took a genetic test and found out many of the medications she was prescribed were not right for her. And so that's why she had such a terrible reaction. So it's easily preventable if you had just looked at her genetics before prescribing. So it's a really simple thing, but there's such a big impact out there. And so anyway, began researching as much as I could and getting into this space and getting excited about it, but feeling frustrated that for pharmacists, there didn't seem to be, quote unquote, jobs to help people understand their genetics. Pharmacist jobs are still very traditional in pharmacies, in hospitals, in traditional settings. But I see a world of possibility using pharmacists to champion genetic-based dosing and helping people get the right medicine for their body. And so it's a really exciting space to be. It's not new technology. As you said, pharmacogenomics has been around for a while. It's just such a complicated topic and can be overwhelming that I think that's why why most people still today don't have a genetic test for their medications. Oh, I can't hear you.
Sorry, I muted myself so you wouldn't hear the ambulance going next door. You talk about this need for pharmacists to get involved. Let's start with the basics. The basics are, we all went through pharmacy school. I mean, I went a lot earlier than you did. I feel old as dirt, but ignoring that part of it, when I went through pharmacy school, there was this conversation of, in the future, there will be pharmacogenomics. And this was literally 20 years ago. I still feel like it feels like the future even today. Why do you think it hasn't been accepted and hasn't been a core component of what we do?
I think there's many barriers, but I think the biggest one is that pharmacists have not championed this and haven't pushed it forward. Because patients, if they rely on their doctor to do this testing, doctors are already overwhelmed and overworked. And when they get a report that's 138 pages on detailed pharmacology dosing, their eyes glaze over, and it's just too much information that it's not their specialty to analyze and interpret. That's a pharmacist's role. That's what we do. We learned all this in pharmacy school. And so to have a pharmacist be able to champion it, to interpret it, give a summary of the results, and move forward confidently, I think is the biggest reason. Because everyone else who looks at those reports just feels like their brain wants to explode and like, too much information. I don't know what I'm looking at. I can't deal with this.
So what you're saying is that this opens up a whole new avenue of looking at things that most other professions aren't qualified to do. Is that fair?
Yeah.
But we've been struggling a little bit as well as pharmacists. Like, the education isn't there. So here's my question. When we were studying this, I didn't have a class on pharmacogenomics. I expect you didn't either. So I did, however, have a class on pharmacology and a little bit of toxicology. But my question is, what kinds of bits and information around pharmacogenomics would probably, around the other courses would probably flow into pharmacogenomics that makes it a more complete understanding, if you will? Does that question make sense? Like, allow you to
within pharmacy school, where does this fit?
Yeah. Where should this fit within pharmacy school?
Yeah, in your pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics class. Because that's what you're looking at with this PGX report, is how the body, how those liver enzymes, and how those enzymes are working. So it's really just a deep dive into kinetics and dynamics. So it's not a separate science. It's just looking, we know kinetics and dynamics in general. This is per person, how it's actually working. So for me, it's crazy that every pharmacist isn't doing this, because it's not a silo part of pharmacy that like, oh, we're the branch of pharmacy that looks at how it actually works for a person. It's like saying, oh, we're a section of pharmacy that just specializes in drug allergies. Other people don't worry about drug allergies. We do. And it's like, oh, everyone should consider this. It's just part of personalized medicine.
And that's the truth. It's the future, which is personalized medicine. So as we get into this new version of personalized medicine, what have been some barriers in educating people that you have found? Like, let's talk a little bit about where can people even get educated? What's out there to actually teach people? And what is the solution you have to make that process even simpler?
To teach lay people or pharmacists?
Either way, let's start with lay people first, and then go to the pharmacists.
Yeah. So right now, lay people, if they want to learn more, it's like sounding crickets. Like there's not a lot of education for lay people to even be asking their doctor about it. Recently, though, 23andMe, that the genetic testing company, started doing a pharmacogenomics panel where people can order it themselves. They don't even need a doctor to do it, because people are starting to be interested in taking care of their own health and being in charge of that. And so through companies like 23andMe or Pharmazam, patients are able to order their own genetic tests and get the results and then review them with the doctor. So there's options opening up for them. They're pretty small panels and don't give you a lot of information, but it's better than nothing for sure.
So for most people, it's basically there's no information, but you might be able to, if you're lucky, get it from a 23andMe or someone else. And there are a few other companies, but the question, what I hear you saying is there's no one to actually help interpret it. You just get a report and you don't know what to make of it. Okay. Yes. So now explain.
Exactly. And that's where I see the hole for our profession, because even when patients are talking to me and they say, well, I want to get this, what pharmacist knows how to do this? And I feel like, I can't answer that for you. There's few pharmacists championing this. And so that's why I had to create the Pharmacogenomics Consulting Confidence Academy to teach pharmacists how to use this tool in their tool belt and to really take off with it, because there's so much opportunity. You just have to get out there and find it for yourself in your community and in your network.
So give me a URL for that, though.
So I'm working on the website right now, but go to mine. It's drjamiewelke.com.
There we go. drjamiewelke.com. Is that where they can reach you as well?
Yep, that's where they can reach me and find out more about the course.
So tell me about the course now. So if I'm a pharmacist who's interested in finding out more about what pharmacogenomics can do for me, I'm going to go to drjamiewelke.com, and then what am I going to see there?
So you're going to see how pharmacogenomics has possibility in so many different practices, whether you choose to work with a doctor's office and do the consulting for them, to see patients yourself, partner with long-term nursing facilities. There's just so many options of ways you can do this. And so for a pharmacist who's feeling either stuck in their job and looking to branch into something new, or to provide more value to the patients they're taking care of right now, this can really help get them to be an expert in their field and to understand not only the science behind it, but the business aspect of being an entrepreneur and doing something new. Because as a profession, we are not risk takers and get very nervous about doing new things. And that's how I felt when I started my consulting practice. And so I want to provide a forum where we can all share our successes and help each other along in this very unique space.
So you talk about this very unique space, but there are already still some barriers, and I'll start with the first one. I think one of the biggest thing is, how do you even get a prescription to actually get the testing done? Do you wait for sort of doing it in one of the, like you said, you send your own blood out and that's what you use, or do you actually use something more defined, like working with a physician's office? How does the process normally work? Walk through the process for me.
Oh yeah, so it's really easy because it's a non-invasive test. So all you're doing is a cheek swab or a saliva test. And so many patients can do this themselves once we get the doctor's order. And so either I, as a pharmacist, recommend it from the doctor, or the doctor will send it off themselves. All we need is an order from the lab. The patient generally does the collection themselves, ships it in the prepackaged FedEx or whatever company it is that the lab is working with, drops it in the mail, and then 2 to 3 weeks later, they have their results. So it's so easy.
So they get this result. Now what do they do?
So now they need to talk to their pharmacist to help them interpret it, because a lot of physicians want to use it, but they just don't know how to read it. And so then my recommendation is talk to a pharmacist who knows how to do this, and they can walk them through it. And what a pharmacist can provide is greater than just, if you're just looking at the report and just the drug gene interactions, then you're kind of missing the wider scope. So I use this as a tool in my tool belt and kind of zoom out and look at not just these drug gene interactions, but also all of the medications they're taking and all of the supplements and all of the over-the-counter products and their experience on them and the questions they have outside of just the narrow report. Because if you're just looking that close, then you miss a lot of valuable information that their greater self who takes medication can benefit from.
So that's interesting. You mentioned what you said a few seconds ago is this idea that you work with pharmacists. Have you thought about actually teaching the physicians themselves?
That's one of my next steps, because that's what I'm excited about teaching too. To help, it will help a lot with adoption when physicians and prescribers are more comfortable with it too.
So do you see physicians basically ordering a lab panel and a genetic test in the future, and and then do you think that they'll actually just take it on at that point itself, and then pharmacists will do the verification based on genetics, or do you see a different version of this where physician reaches out and creates a consultative practice?
I can see it so many different ways. The way I like it, that the physician orders it in the practice for all of their patients, but then I also like to see all independent pharmacies around the country ordering these for their patients too, because they're the ones that see the patients and having trouble and questions with their medication, and to be able to say, hey, you've been back here 4 different times for different antidepressants. It looks like you're not getting adequate therapy. Let's take care of this for you and walk it through with you, because pharmacists have more value of time that they can share and can really dig into everything with their medicine that more than prescribers have available. So I see it being accessed and utilized at every point of care for patients. And once we can get over the barrier of it being integrated into the electronic health record, then we'll really be cruising, because then everyone will be on the same page. So there are some barriers, and I think a lot of people are waiting on the sidelines because of those barriers. But my advice is to just get started. And if you can succeed despite the barriers, then as those get knocked down, you'll be able to grow and scale and have a leg up on everyone else who's saying, this is so great, I'm waiting on the side, I'm ready once insurance pays 100% for it, and it's just seamless in the electronic health record.
The thing is, as I see it, the day insurance starts paying for it, I think a lot of individual pharmacies might land up in a scenario where, let's say it's a CVS or a Rite Aid, they'll just say, we're going to require that our pharmacists do that anyways. It's just going to become part of their job, as opposed to being a value add. So do you worry about that format, or do you think that the demands on those pharmacists is so high in terms of time that they just don't have the time to focus on some of these considerations that might be useful?
Oh yeah, it will happen in the future. It's so complex in how they're going to address it that I don't foresee that being a problem for 5 to 10 years. But those who embrace it early and get to be experts in the field then get a leg up rather than having it forced upon you. So I for sure hope that it's considered in all of those big chain interactions in the future too. But until then, championing it now will just help your patients more and help you and your career more, who is looking for leaders in this field.
So now we've got a situation where you basically went from creating this program, and how big is this program? How long does it take to complete? Is it onerous?
No, it only takes 7 weeks to complete, and you have access to it for a year, because building a side hustle, a consulting practice, takes more than 7 weeks. And so you can go through it in 7 weeks and then refer back to it for a whole year.
Perfect. So now you went in and you said that you're going to figure this out. You went from being a pharmacist in a retail pharmacy, and you said, no, you know what, I'm going to do something different. What was that? If the momtrepreneur term probably gets thrown around more than likely. What was that like for you, going from being a pharmacist to an entrepreneur, if you will?
Oh my gosh, like night and day difference. It was thrilling and scary at the same time, because all my career, I was just used to clocking in and out to work and never thinking of anything work related outside of work. And that's why I loved being a pharmacist. One of the aspects was, once I'm clocked out of work, it is not my problem. I don't have to think about it. But there's also the looming problem of increased workload and increased stress and decreased satisfaction that was not going away anytime soon. And so I knew if I didn't do something sooner rather than later, I'd probably just be more unhappy in my job or just be replaced. And so while it was scary, it was even scarier to think of my future if I didn't do something different. If I just left my fate up to corporate's hands and decided my employment. And so it was scary, but also really exciting. And I kind of can't believe I didn't ever think of entrepreneurship before this, because now that I'm doing it, I feel really well suited to it. And I love what I do, that it's a creative pursuit too, that I get to create something from nothing and help other people. So it's been enormously rewarding, very, very busy on top of, life at home, but I'm happy where I'm at.
So when did you start working on this?
Last year, at the beginning of the pandemic. Mm-hmm.
So you entered the pandemic a retail pharmacist. You exited, or you are exiting, as a entrepreneur. Yeah. That should be definitely part of the visual GIF that I create out of this, or GIF that I create out of this. So now you are creating the system. How long did it take you to make? Like, what was the impact of this on your family life, considering COVID was taking up so much of your time?
Oh my gosh, I was just working nonstop, day and night, every second of time I could get, figuring out how to do this, because no one had done something unique like this before. And so really, I didn't watch Netflix for months at a time, because every spare second that I wasn't with my kids or at work was building this on the side. And so I was even to the point where I didn't even know what was going on in the greater world. I wasn't listening to the news. Anytime I was driving, I was listening to entrepreneurial podcasts and pharmacogenomics podcasts, and just every second of my life was just filled with learning information. Because the great thing about living right now in 2021 is there's so much information out there, and it's all accessible to you. And so it feels crazy not to do something right now, because you have so much information to help you get started, and you can reach all the people who are looking for you so easily. So it, oh my gosh, took over my life, but it was really worth it. And I'm proud of what I created.
Yes, you did. And you should be. So how has the response been so far? Do you struggle with people wanting validation, or do you find that you did this for yourself? And how has that sort of played itself out?
Yeah, it's been really rewarding to see how much interest there is in this, because I did it for myself. So I created my consulting practice for myself, and I wasn't even planning on teaching other pharmacists. It was on my 5-year plan, on my goals. But then so many people were reaching out to me on LinkedIn and through my email saying hey, I love what you created. Teach me how to do it. I felt well, okay, I'm onto something. It's so small-minded to just keep working in my small practice and not share what I've learned. And so it's been rewarding to have what I've created and what I love be of interest and of help to others.
Right. So how are you marketing this? How are people finding out that you're doing this?
That's a good question. Right now, it's just been on LinkedIn, because as a pharmacist, I don't know about marketing or any of this. So it's just kind of grown organically from my LinkedIn posts. But now I'm doing a really big webinar next month that talks about everything that I do, that provides examples of students that I'm working with that are already seeing success, and kind of showing the value of pharmacogenomics. And so then with more webinars and a real official shiny new website, then I'm really excited to get the word out there even more.
So will that be on your website if people go to it right now?
They can register their interest, and then once the webinar launches, then I'll get them signed up. Yes.
And what's the website again?
drjamiewelke.com.
Very, very cool. Now I'm going to do a quick summary, Jamie, because we're starting to run out of time here. But you spent 10 years in retail. You kind of saw the silliness of people saying, "Not my job," and basically you said, "I want to help people." You saw a close family member had to go into psych ward because she was not being appropriately treated, and that became the basis of you learning pharmacogenomics. And there are several barriers to it. Obviously, everything from pharmacists are struggling with what this means, to prescribing and the limitations around that. The payment system is a big issue as well. And then there's the whole consideration of, will physicians sort of respond well to the idea of genetics-based dosing? And for that, one of the things you're doing is you're actually creating a website that's going to actually hopefully not just teach pharmacists, but also teach physicians. And as part of that, you actually talked about how one of the key portions of that is going to be electronic health records and adoption into that process. After that, we landed up talking a little bit about your journey. You talked about how you entered COVID, and considering you were working really hard, you may not have heard about this, but for the last year we've had COVID, so that's been a problem. But we you entered COVID as a retail pharmacist, exiting an entrepreneur, and you're loving every second of it. And you started as trying to learn pharmacogenomics yourself, and you landed up with a teaching program out of this that shall we say has seen some success. And is that fair? Have I missed anything? Oh, I actually have a question for you.
Yes.
That just got asked. I have Kishila Naidu, who says, what are some disease states that would really benefit from the pharmacogenomics pharmacy consulting?
Kishila, that is an awesome question. I'm so glad you asked. So as I kind of referred to earlier, mental health is the biggest one for me and for a lot of providers, because right now in mental health, it's just a lot of guessing and saying, here, try this. If it doesn't work, maybe we'll increase the dose or try something else. And so it's just a frustrating amount of guessing. So mental health is the biggest one. There's also benefit for cardiovascular disease with like clopidogrel. And if that's working, also pain management, oncology for sure, some infectious disease, PPIs, it kind of goes on. But for me, the biggest ones are mental health, cardiovascular, and oncology.
There you go. And what are some that need some more help before they get there? What disease states might actually still need some more research, if you will?
Oh yeah, so like diabetes per se. Diabetes right now is a huge disease state that's affecting America, but right now it doesn't seem to be impacted, at least with clinical guidelines to guide future prescribing. Clinical guidelines keep getting updated, so we're finding out more and more and more. The studies just weren't done in the past, so hopefully in 5 years, I can't say that anymore, but right now, diabetes and hypertension in general aren't as affected by this testing.
So we have another question. Hi, Jamie, this is a really good initiative and unique, but what level of public awareness is there on the importance of pharmacogenomics, and are people ready to spend on pharmacogenomic testing?
Oh, good question. Yeah, so there's not a level of public awareness. Like in my experience from my life, when I tell people what I do, they all say, I had no idea. That's amazing. And then everyone's next statement to me, I think I have 100% track record on this. When I'm like talking to neighbors or someone at the store and tell them what I do, they say, oh, you need to test my mom, or I have a cousin that really, really needs this. And they all know of this family member that's like terribly managed on their medicine. Usually it's mental health. And so everyone can think of someone that could benefit from it. But people, even if you're not a worst case scenario, just knowing for the rest of your life how a doctor should prescribe for you is completely empowering. And I know for myself, I don't take medications, but I got my own test. And now I'm armed with that information. So when I go to a doctor, I can, and if a prescription was proposed, to say, no, that's not going to work for me. Or, to give you more control in that interaction, because a lot of patients want to have a say in their healthcare. And so to be able to provide this for you for the rest of your life on what's going to work best is really awesome. Especially, and that's another point, like it's not that spendy, a couple $100, and you don't need to take the test again because your genetics don't change. So it's a pretty easy sell to help people really feel confident about medicine.
I've learned a lot during this conversation, but my favorite thing I've learned so far is the key term spendy. I really like that word. but it's not very spendy for sure. But here's my question: you talked about teaching pharmacists, you talked about teaching physicians. Do you think that you'll also end up teaching lay people as well?
Oh yeah, that would be my favorite target to hit. Just because people, are looking for answers, and to be able to show them there's something so exciting they haven't heard of that it doesn't even require your blood. It's so easy. I'm definitely excited for that market too.
We already have a follow-up question. With single whole genome scanning, can we identify the gene mutations which affect a wide variety of drugs, or is it only gene to the drug combination?
Let me read that question again. With whole gene, can we identify gene mutation? Oh yeah. So with whole, the more information we can get on whole genome sequencing, then the more it's going to apply to medications. And so there's already emerging evidence that's outside of specific drug gene interactions. So without getting too technical, with looking at your genetics can find out not only what medications are ideal for you, but other part of your genetics that influence how you respond to it. So it becomes really a fine dance to navigate you and your medications, which is really exciting. And I think shows the value of a pharmacist, that it's not as simple as this is red, you can't take it. This is green, you can take it. Go ahead and change the medicine. It's not a big deal. There's so much that goes into it that's really fine tuning behind the scenes that is exciting.
Jamie, this was super, super fun. Let me ask you, while other people might be prepping for some other questions in case they want to ask, what is one question you'd like to ask the audience based on what we've discussed?
If they see the value of this, and if pharmacogenomics is something that they think that is exciting in the future as I do, because I think I have blinders on that this is like reshaping the future of pharmacy. And so I'm interested to hear their opinions too.
That's a great question. Do you think that pharmacogenomics is the future, and do they see value in it? Mm-hmm. That's a great question. So as you know, we do a couple of rapid fire questions. So I'm going to ask you those if you don't mind.
Let's do it.
So let's do it. Just 2 questions. The first question is the question of the month. What challenged you this month?
What challenged me this month?
Yep.
Thinking big and not second guessing myself, because it's scary to think big and it's scary to think that you can do more. And so waking up every day and saying, nope, I'm setting my goals even higher this month and I know I can do it.
That is so cool. And the question of the week, what was the best part of your job this week?
Oh, talking to a patient who we had a great interaction. They ended up in tears because I was able to show them their mental health medications and why they weren't working, and kind of provide evidence that your medications aren't ideal for you. It's not you that mentally can't cope with life. There's a real genetic component to this disease state, and your medications aren't meeting that. And she just started crying and was like, this is so relieving, because I was just thinking it was my head that I couldn't deal with this. And so anyway, just that patient interaction was really emotional and really awesome, and made it feel like I made a difference in someone's life, which I couldn't always say in my long history in retail.
That's awesome. Just to be clear, nothing in this podcast should be construed as legal or clinical advice of any kind. It is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. Again, for those of you who missed it, where can they reach you?
DrJamieWelke.com.
That is very, very cool. And I have, before I hang up, and usually I hang up, but these questions keep coming because you are really popular. But here's the question. I'm a recent graduate. I'd like to get involved in pharmacogenomics. Would not having a traditional pharmacy work experience be detrimental to starting a career in pharmacogenomics?
No. The thing you need to have success in pharmacogenomics is doing it. Get out there and do it, because your patients aren't going to see you and all of your clinical expertise and ask for your work history. They're just going to be grateful you're there, because as pharmacists, we're really stuck in jobs and in positions, and where the future, a big part is creating something new and meeting a need that's going unmet. And so if you can meet that need, then just drop all the baggage of not feeling like you're enough. If you're a pharmacist, you are enough, and you know more than 99.9% of people about medication. So just own it and move forward boldly.
Look at you. Move forward boldly. That should be the term, the hashtag for today.
Yeah.
Again, thank you so much for coming on. If you can find, if you want to reach out to me, you can reach me at DarshanTalks on Twitter. Go to our website at DarshanTalks.com. Please like this podcast, leave a comment, please subscribe. This was really, really awesome. Jamie, this was awesome having you on. Sounds like we're gonna have to get you back again because people have a lot of questions for you. You already have people saying thank you. So thank you so much for coming on. And stay tuned for the next time I bring back Dr. Jamie Welke from drjamiewelke.com.
Yes. Thank you, Darshan.
Thank you.